Welcome to Season 2, Episode 1 of Cannabis Capitol's Pop Politics. I'm your host, Chris Egger, and I want to thank you all to our audience for being here tonight. Thank you, guys. Give yourselves a round of applause. And for the first episode of the season, I'm joined by two seasoned executives from the compliant and regulated cannabis industry, as well as some legacy history before that. And I want to introduce Mr. Greg Gamet, who is the Chief Operating Officer of Gold Flora. And seated to his right is Waylon Broussard, who is the brand and retail vice president for Coast to Coast and is it C3?
3C Farms.
3C Farms, pardon me. So welcome. And so everyone, as we know, last year was the midterm election year, and there was a lot on the table for cannabis, and there's a lot of disappointment legislatively for cannabis in the year past. But we're now in 2023. It's not an election year. However, legislative action will continue to be front and center for our industry, as well as policy making and how the industry evolves towards 2024, which is our next election cycle, which will be a big one. But also the relationship, the common ground that's being forged with cities and counties throughout the state of California, trying to bring more regulated access. And that's what tonight's show's about. But these two gentlemen, both for me, are going to give a little bit of an introduction to you about who they are and their business models and what they do, so we can get some context going before we start digging into the issues of the day. So, Greg, you want to kick it off for us? Tell us a little bit about Gold Flora and your position there.
Thanks, Cannabis Capitol, Chris, John, everybody here that wants to hear us babble up here. Thank you for coming. Give yourselves a round of applause. So, Greg Gamet, been in the cannabis space for a long time, since 2009 on the regulated front in Colorado. Had the first recreational dispensary there, medical prior to that. Came out to California to build a company called Gold Flora. We're very flower focused. We have vape pens as well. We're vertically integrated. Our stores are air-filled, higher level, King's Crew, and we're getting more and more stores as we come on board. We're vertically integrated. That's our model. RYL distribution. We carry about 20 brands there. Half of them are in-house. And yeah, I'm just happy to be here. We've made a lot of mistakes, so maybe you can learn from a few things we've done and stumbled. I know, I've known Waylon a long time, so I have a lot of respect for him. So I look forward to tonight. So thanks for coming.
Thank you. Appreciate you. And Waylon, if you could just give us a little bit of an insight into your daily work and where you've been and where you're heading.
Yeah. Thank you for everybody for coming out tonight. Just quick note, my politician on our team did not make it tonight, so I'm here. So I got this. With 3C, we go back. I started in 2006, so I think we opened our first dispensary and just dealt with the issues that we've gone through in cannabis since then. In 2013, after going through 280 and whatnot, we've got onto a new team, and we've got two dispensaries, one in Canoga Park, one in downtown Los Angeles. I've been cultivating some pretty good OG for a long time now, and I'm happy to say that we're still alive in the legal cannabis space.
Great, man. And that's a great point, so we should talk tonight, because I think, why don't we skip, I've given you guys some questions to prepare from, but I think it's good. Maybe we can start with this. The legacy market is different than the black market, right? But there is an illicit market that the regulated industry is competing with. And, we talk about more stores and how critical that is, especially for the cultivation side, right? To be able to have access to the consumer. There's obviously a consumer out there for cannabis if there is an illicit market flourishing where there's no legal stores. So, for you guys, operating in the legal market, making that transition, why don't we start with you, if you don't mind, Waylon, and tell us a little bit about the struggles or the successes there and what you've seen in your experience of it.
Well, for myself, I came from Northern California. I'm Cali raised, Cali born. I think we tried to do it in Northern California in 2004, 2006 is when we came down here and finally were able to transition into the original 187 shops. So we got in early with...
the pre-ICUs?
Pre-ICOs.
Not ICUs.
We got in early with that, but it just... the hurdles that we've gone through, it's just a roller coaster in this industry. Really, what it comes down to is we've gone through robberies, not having insurance, to finally now getting insurance, to getting robbed January 2nd. We go through a lot of just struggles in this industry with the regulations, the changes, and then to have to make a decision to split from I don't know if you want to call it the black market, that side, the traditional side.
I call it legacy, right? Because in Prop 215 compliant era, people were doing a lot of things legally in that era of time that transitioned right after 2016 in the AUMA.
Because a lot of people weren't given the proper opportunity, or didn't want to stick their neck out there and go for it. And a lot of us did, and a lot of us got clipped, I think, in the very beginning of this and throughout these years. If you weren't able to make adjustments and changes pretty fast and to stay alive, it was, you got left in the dust on it. And we did it. We went down that route. And, with our team, it's been a lot of challenges, but I think with a new market, I'm just curious to see what really happens with, the new stores and taxes coming on. I'm just curious. I don't know.
Well, and I've always said that Uber disrupted taxi cabs the way regulation disrupted cannabis, right? So to your point, as we've all made this transition, and Greg, you're the chief operating officer, right? So you're dealing with all facets of the company, human resources, operations. How much importance does the city or the municipal, whether it be a county or city, that level of regulation versus dealing with the state? Where's your mindset on all that?
So before we go into a city, we pick the city. There's some cities we won't work with. A lot of cities are 4-3 on the vote to even legalize it. They could flip-flop even the next week. So we try not to invest money or go in an M&A round and try to buy a dispensary in a take LA, for instance, has beat Waylon up for a decade or more. So we choose not to do that. So we try to find the easier path. We do try to apply and grow our stores organically first. And, you get lucky. You win a lottery, and then you get to open up and then battle against the illegal market. So you win the lottery, and now you got, people actually delivering weed to your parking lot. So it's tough. So the city is, the level of enforcement, I believe, has gone up now against the illicit market. And there's different levels of that. There's the 215 guys that actually were getting local permits and working. Then there's still the shady side of the business. There isn't anything. So the guys like Waylon who are actually trying to pull permits and get stuff done early on. And in Colorado, there's no battle against the illicit market. It's not that big. So if a legal shop opened up there, the city shuts it down within weeks. So the city is very important. Any local legislation directly affects your day-to-day operations and your profit margins.
Right. And so to your point about talking about a city's willingness or an interest, in this past election cycle, LA County, Huntington Beach, Claremont, good sizable cities, even out in the Inland Empire, I believe like Montclair passed the tax. Everyone was passing a tax before they were actually looking at doing a legislative framework for letting licensing occur. Is that a sustainable model for the industry? And what should we be thinking about as we look at openings, the 62% of cities and county areas that aren't currently allowing regulated sales? I mean, do you have some insight there, Greg, that you could throw at us?
Yeah, so tax
experience
rates.
from Colorado?
Yeah, well, the more cities that open up for legalization here, they're going to start battling each other on the tax rate. So bordering cities are going to, they're charging 9% over there. We're going to charge 7%, try to get some people from that city to shop here. Same thing they do with malls. They put them right on the borders, try to get people to come shop, give the city the sales tax. What the problem is it's not the city sales tax. It's all the taxes leading up to that. And if you're a vertical operator, you're unconstitutionally getting double taxed. It's the letter of the law. So when cities open up, and by the way, the reason they passed the tax thing first is so now they can budget out and have projected revenues so they can spend more money now on projects, get projects kicking around, and then they worry about the legalization. But we were talking earlier, even the stuff that passed this fall in November, next year now they're going to do the rules and regulations in those cities, and then they're going to do the application, and then one of the applicants is going to sue the city, so they're going to delay picking the applicants who get to open up. So I've seen cities 3-4 years after they actually pass something to even get to the point where they're issuing, CUPs and permits to open up.
Well, you had talked about the fact that you look at cities and whether or not they're amenable and favorable and a partner, so to speak, to cannabis businesses. Do you see passing a tax as putting them into that category, or do you see them as still, let's wait and see?
I think it gets them a long ways because, like I said, they budget that money, and downturn in the economy, all the cities are making up budget gaps. So you'll see a lot of that. We saw it early on in Colorado too. There was cities that would never pass it, and then when they tried to get the tax for the school systems, they said, well, if you didn't legalize it, you can't get the state school tax. So then they would legalize it and then make it tough to open up so they get the tax. So yeah, yes and no. I mean, it could be a good thing. I think Huntington Beach, I think we're pretty close there right now, past that. I think they have a very favorable city council, but it's an election back and forth. It could change, next week.
Well, that's the truth, right? Because it was supposed to be on the agenda last night for the city council after the close of last year. They said once we pass this tax, we're going to bring forth some sort of legislation. Were you part of the early phase, Waylon, when they were actually writing the pre-ICO and doing all the legislative language? Did you get involved on the political level at the city of Los Angeles? Because that was a deep jungle, right?
We were a part of a couple of groups. Like GLACA was back in the day that we worked with, the Greater Los Angeles Caregivers Alliance. And we tried to, we did a good job of pushing it forward, which is changed. Myself, not so much, but my group, it's been, it's still, as much as we try to work together in those situations, a lot of it always ended up being dog eat dog, and it just didn't seem like we really got a lot of push. And then when I think UCBA came along, we really started to see a little bit more effort, I think, from the political power side and getting working.
That's where I first met you.
Yeah, that's where we met.
And so you guys are part of that organization. They've been on the stage here for some of the programming that's been done with us for the Long Beach Collective Association. And they're basically aligning everyone who's a proprietor or retail business owner, or are they out in the vertically integrated range?
Well,
Like cultivation, manufacturing.
It was
all the-
retailers is really what UCBA is. A lot of us retailers in that situation are also a lot of vertical integration.
For me, all right, so one of the things that having you all up here tonight, and maybe, Greg, this goes back to your experience in Colorado, and are you feeling that the market's maturing and that politically we're not as relevant in some of these cities anymore? Or to your point, is the contribution that cannabis makes economically probably the best calling card we have?
as far as market maturity, California is where it started, right? And the guys stuck their neck out first. You guys voted to legalize it under the medical stuff way back in the day. So we used to watch from other states going, man, someday we can do that. And you actually had stores and cannabis clubs and helping sick people. And that really opened everything up. So the maturest market still is California in many ways, maybe not on how they regulate the tax and how they enforce and that, but this is where legal weed started in the whole world as far as regulation. They, tried back in the day with the caregiver model. Colorado followed, but Colorado's, like I always say, the maturity of that market is more on, people here operate legally and try their best, but out there, the enforcement is just overbearing. So, be careful what you ask for. But early on, they spent a lot of the tax money collected in enforcing against the illegal market rather than putting more rules and regs and hurdles for legal operators who are trying to do the right thing to start. And I think California could learn a little bit on that end. So instead of having a bunch of inspectors inspecting legal businesses, they should come look, but they should also, you call in, there's a guy, selling weed in our parking lot. Yeah, nothing really we can do about that. So,
Not their jurisdiction.
you're gonna have to call, community health on that. Then you call them and they tell you to call somebody else. But yeah, it's definitely mature in many ways out here, but on the enforcement side, I'd like to see it mature.
And this brings up a good point. I want to ask you, Waylon, when you were describing being robbed earlier this year, right? What is your relationship with your city, your surrounding community, and did you get a public safety response? Did law enforcement view you as a member of the business community? Do you see that relationship now with your community on the civic level?
Yeah, I think it's been, we're treated like any other business. It's Los Angeles. So for the issues that we had, or, 45 minutes before a law enforcement shows up for a break-in, but I can't expect that to be any better for any other industry in LA. It's so busy. But for the most part, they've done the two different break-ins that we've had in the last 2 years at our facility. Law enforcement has been they've been on top of it. They've been there for us. They've made a very they didn't give us, I guess to say, like the old stigma, like, oh, you're just a weed shop. We've dealt with that. That was 2009, 2010, doing with break-ins, and them just kind of looking at us and almost turning their noses to us. I think it's evolved to where they realize that we're a real industry. We're not going anywhere, and what we do bring to our local communities and just with the revenue the tax that we're bringing in now.
Right. And so, Greg, are you going to be looking at any of these cities for expansion that are upcoming? Since we know that there's some up in Northern California, like Healdsburg in Sonoma County, which is fine wine country and probably not a huge retail demographic, but obviously a lot of drive-by traffic on 101 going through that area. But, there's some Central Valley, I think Avenel, right, and some cities outside of Coalinga. And then finally here in Southern California, there's a whole, array of communities that put it out. Do you see Gold Flora looking into this?
All of them. We have a particular model in areas that we like to be in. Of course, we want to have nice revenues, but we want to have good partners, good communities to be in. A lot of this stuff will happen in the next year. People are gonna combine forces. People are gonna roll up underneath different people. So we're looking for opportunities this year. This is the year I think that people can really start setting their feet in the ground if you're vertically integrated. And so any chance that we have to pick up more retail and push our in-house brands first and foremost, and then on our distribution side, we have a lot of brands that we consider in-house on our side. So we try to push those through our outlets. So you got to pick up retail. You can control your internal pricing better that way and be more stable. So, yeah, any and all we try to look at.
Do you, Waylon, do you see?
I was just going to say that's why 3C Cannabis is on the RYL distribution trucks.
Nice.
These guys are on their expansion path, and, for us, it's, we're a smaller group and just kind of going through it, but I think with some of these expansions, it allows a group like us to really get out there further. And I rely on, these powerhouses that are coming together. And a lot of these roll-ups are happening in that situation, and I'm just happy to kind of still be, here.
Hey, real quick, but it's the year of the BOGO, right? Every time you turn around, they're giving me a BOGO. Can you give me a BOGO? So I get it. I want, low price, great quality products, keep going to customers, but also these businesses need to stay in business so we can keep giving these quality products out to the folks who need them. But on the other hand, if you're vertically integrated and you pick up, brands like we actually carry his brands in our portfolio, the OGs, by the way, good job on those. You get more stabilized pricing. You don't have to, quote unquote, drop your drawers to get in all these doors. You can kind of hold steady because you got to make money. You got to be able to pay your employees, and you got to be able to pay your rent and your electric bill, just like, everybody at home. Businesses are struggling right now to make ends meet to get through this little downturn. So,
but do you think that more stores opening up in not just LA, but in these Southern Californias is really going to help with the supply right now? Like it seems like there's an oversupply, and they feel like they think, okay, if we open up more stores right now, we can actually get that product through. But I don't know if that's really going to be the solving factor.
Yeah, more stores open is going to be nice to have more outlets. I think last year overproduction was crazy. Now I've heard rumors like there's 1.3 million less pounds grown this year.
Well, some people, left their,
I don't know.
Left things fallow. Well, metric will be able. You can analyze metric eventually, right? And people watch that data.
30,000 less indoor lights are going on right now. Just stuff like that you hear, but fireweed still $1,000 a pound, and until it starts getting back up into 1,400-1,500, there's a lot of the really good operators that are struggling. right now.
And Waylon, to your point, right? So in an illicit market mindset, right? When a store opens, a regulated store opens in its community, it does transfer a lot of the consumer base into the regulated market. Number one, variety, right? Number two, they all know quality, right? Fire is going to be fire. It's going to be all pre-established, and they're going to have, the lab testing on point, and everything's going to be kind of structured that way in the store. And so I've seen it take root in many ways, right? To your point, you're competing with an existing market, but the illicit market doesn't tend to have that ability to varietize, and they don't lock in the same surety of like consistency and all those things that go along with it. So I do see more stores actually helping grow regulated cannabis in California. The problem is, though, and I mean it, you've been someone who've dealt with this, is the League of California Cities and the idea that local control is more important than a robust and healthy regulated cannabis industry emerging out of the 2016 election. And that's been a real struggle for us,
Well, I mean, I don't know if, I think right now, more stores opening up, it's to get more compliant flower out there. I think the traditional market still has a huge footprint. They have, on what the local trends are, what some of the new strains, those things, I think that's culture, and a lot of these stores, to bring it into the stores is great, but I think the problem is competing against the taxes. So as the taxes just recently are going to be increased to the consumer with this new excise tax switching from the distribution to the retailer, at the end of the day, I think the consumer is going to see a little bit more of an increase in the price, which is then going to push them back over to the black market where they, every penny counts, I think, at this time. And now you're going to see more stores open up that have to compete against other stores. And I feel like there's a flood of compliant flower in California. And I think that's what's driving the sales down for us right now.
Yeah, with not enough outlets, right? I mean, with not enough places to get to the consumer with it.
I got a question for you, Waylon. So you banged your head against the wall, city of LA, all these years, right? And I guess it's a statement and a question. So we operate in some cities where the city's very, very good at shutting down. San Jose, for one. There's, I think, 8 or 9 licenses there. That's it. San Jose is bigger than many areas, like neighborhoods in LA. So if you had a 10-mile radius, 10 miles is a big radius, a 3-mile radius of your store, how many illegal brick and mortars are that close to you?
Well, it was a lot more, and I will say that, but it's not necessarily just the brick and mortars. I mean, there's got to be, it's the deliveries. The deliveries are the ones that you see they're on your Yelp pages, they're your Facebook pages, they're posting their deliveries. You're getting the text messages through whatever list. Those are the ones that are going to be hard to shut down.
And New York City is struggling with it on the front side of it as well, right? Like overnight, once they legalized cannabis, there was like 2,800 bodegas throughout the city that were selling cannabis, right?
Big vans that drive around, just pull over. Hey, I'll take a dime bag. Okay.
They made up for all of our Prop 215 era, work on legislation in New York in the 1 year, prior to it. Well, that's actually an interesting time to dip into it, guys. There's a lot of disappointment last year on the federal level, right? Everyone was hoping that we would see something happen in the Safe Banking Plus, potentially rescheduling, descheduling. I know that the president has ordered some research. Greg, have you been following that? We touched on it a little bit earlier as you arrived.
Yeah. I got to tell you, this last October, I was pretty optimistic. It's finally, it's going to happen. Midterms around the corner. They're going to pass the Safe Banking Act, which means a lot to operators. 280E, we get taxed. Long story short, we get taxed at an extremely high rate because we sell a Schedule I narcotic, a marijuana plant that's more dangerous in the government's eyes than methamphetamines and heroin. So we don't get to write off cost of anything, but that's not cost of goods we can't write off. So basically, the labor in a dispensary, we can't write that labor off. So I was super excited, and I'm political. Let's put them all in one bucket at this moment because 2 years ago Schumer drug his feet on it, and then this year McConnell drug his feet on it, and they keep trying to attach it to different bills. It needs to be I'm a big Cory Booker fan. He needs to push it through. It needs to be its own thing. It needs to be the main thing of a vote rather than tacking it onto a defense spending bill. I mean, how's it going to get passed there? They're going to cut that fat off there right away. So There's another route we kind of touched on is getting it descheduled or an executive order to deschedule it down. But if you deschedule it to a 2 or 3, then the FDA gets involved. So you kind of want it to be 4. But I have no doubt they will fuck it up at some point in the next year and do something wrong, and then we're going to have to rework it from the other end. So as an operator since 2009, and the first year you're rolling like I'm doing well, then you go see your CPA and like, oh, there's this 280E thing. It's a nightmare. That would instantly lower prices in cannabis. That would really be able to compete with the black market, regardless of all the other taxes. This would make it possible. If you're not vertically integrated like Waylon and I, there's no labor write-off. Cost of goods sold at a farm, you can write the labor off. But so just all the single store operators, I feel bad for them. I'm a single store operator in Colorado still. That store struggles to make a profit because of 280E.
Right, and 280E requires rescheduling.
Yeah.
Because it's basically saying if you're a Schedule 1, it's an old drug war era law that was passed, and it applies to anything that's on Schedule 1, not just cannabis.
Yeah,
right?
originally it was so cocaine dealers couldn't write off their speedboats and their bribes to judges. So they apply it to cannabis.
And then safe banking. I mean, Waylon, you talked about it. You've been in this for a minute, trying to do it the right way and in the regulated space. What have your relationships been with the banks, and how important do you think it would be for the federal government to have some sort of legislative action, at least in that area, if not interstate and everything?
I mean, the safe banking would definitely make things a lot easier. The 280E, that we went through that. I got audited in 2013, and they went back to 2009. And we were almost $1 million in debt. And then you could get your accounts start getting levied, writing checks. It just put us into a bad tailspin. I think moving forward and getting safe banking, it would make the consumer's experience a lot more normal for a lot of these situations. The cashless ATM, the ATMs, and I think that also is just another, a target on us for when it comes to, these break-ins that we're dealing with right now. People think that, we're just full of cash too. So I think that the safe banking will definitely make things a lot more simplified and easier for us to conduct our businesses again.
So something that should still be prioritized.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I've gone through, Wells, Omni, every bank that we could, and now you're stuck with these banks that are the interest rates they charge us just to have an account open.
You played whack-a-mole for years, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and that's the truth, right? And also, we've talked about social equity and some of its failures in the market space where people aren't capitalized to succeed, even though they maybe have a deserved right to apply and be put into a pole position, so to speak, with the social equity programs that are out there, that the Small Business Administration loans that are available to other businesses, prime rate credit, right, which is just not available right now. You're always going to pay more for it in the cannabis industry, right?
Most people, the safe banking is so we can have a bank account and safely transfer money into it. That's what they call it. But really, it's opening up regular funds. So every time that I want to expand, I don't have to jump on a plane to go to New York, beg a bunch of rich people for money, or anything like that. We can actually go to the bank and pull out a loan. We pay them back. We get an interest rate that's not above 10, 12. I've seen some outrageous stuff. So that's the biggest thing. So right now it's family offices, it's friends and family, it's wherever you can beg, borrow, and steal if you want to expand, because it's
private equity.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to be like poor me, poor us party, because we're very fortunate to get to do what we do. But we just have, like in any other industry, we'd be killing it. Like if we had a grocery store or whatever, it just seems like the hurdles that we have to jump over are a lot like tobacco or gaming and that kind of stuff. The sin taxes.
So, well, how do you? These are good points, and I'm trying to bounce between the two of you. The idea of Delta 8, Delta 10, and some of the competition that's emerged in that space as well, adding insult to injury on the illicit market. Do you feel like enough's being done to kind of align that side of our industry with what's going on in the broader regulated cannabis market? Should we be taxing it? Should we be regulating it to the dispensaries like we do with THC and Delta 9?
I mean, absolutely. I feel if it's going to be the same category, but at the same time, in our legal dispensaries, not being allowed to sell pure CBD or hemp-derived CBD in the dispensaries. It's, we can't sell all those other
Absurd.
things.
Absurd.
That's absurd. We're the ones under all the strict regulation and taxes, but we can't sell everything else that everyone else can sell, I feel like. So,
Yeah, I mean, it would be nice if they regulated us like they regulate them, instead of them being regulated like us. That'd be nice.
And to your point too, how relevant do you think the potential for interstate commerce would be for some of this oversupply and these oversupply problems that specifically California, maybe Oregon and Washington are having?
well, I mean, this is Cali, so I think that if they open the doors, a lot of these other, I think, states and facilities and organizations think that they want to get in here easier, but it's Cali weed. I'm looking forward to it because then I can actually put my California grown weed coast to coast and not have to deal with some of these issues of trying to license out to another state, to another SOP, to another group, and hope that they hold my, my legacy in good light and standing. So I look forward to it.
I think it's the same reason why you don't have a surf shop in Iowa, right? It's Cali weed. It's where it's we trademarked around it right there. Trademarked California grown there for us. So when interstate happens, it will. But honestly, they can't even get their shit together on the banking bill. How are we going to get all these different states to agree on shipping? If that happens, I'd be very surprised. Welcome it. Maybe Alabama can decide not to import it there, or some other state that doesn't want it. But if it's a legal state, I don't see why not.
Yeah, I mean, there's models for it. I mean, I hate to always compare us to alcohol, right? But, wine is not for sale through the mail in every state throughout the country. You can't sell California wine to certain states via mail, wine clubs, things like that. But in other instances, you can. Interstate commerce, can be regulated by state decision making. At the end of the day, I do believe for California especially, it'd be a dominant way for us to express a lot of the cultural history and the cultivation and the regulatory side. And that is, we know that a lot of product from California is still making its way throughout the United States, right? So, well, hey, Greg, when we talk about this, right, I talked about common ground coming on tonight. For the industry right now, if you could list out and maybe take some of these issues we've described, put them in order as a chief operating officer, you're sitting with your team, you're saying, guys, we need to be aware. What do you think these, is it local for California? Is it the macro, federal? Where would you put the issues in rank right now?
Well, I'd say overtaxation is number one without saying, and that you can wrap 280E into that and all that kind of stuff. But really, enforcement on the illicit market in California would be very huge. So if those two things were to happen this year, I think the price of products would go down for people, quality would go up. I think you'd see a big expansion of legal jobs, legal paying jobs with good insurance and that kind of stuff. The federal government, whether they're in it or out of it, we still got to operate by local rules and regulations. That's kind of how it always started. And if the federal government does legalize it, what are they going to do to it? They're going to tax it. Yeah, exactly. So I don't think. But I'm not in a hurry for federal legalization like most people. We're a single state operator. We're out here in California to win it, and by winning it is winning it together, not winning it over a different company. But if everybody is doing well, then we have a really good industry. So, just local government, get the taxes down, and enforcement, and that's the main goal.
Well, for cultivation, do you have different cities that you operate retail? When you're in Los Angeles, do you cultivate and do your that side of your manufacturing business in the city of LA too, or do you find other cities have a more amenable structure for that?
Well, my group, we're all out of Los Angeles. We're in LA County. You, on the other hand, you're spread across.
Yeah, our cultivation facility is in Desert Hot Springs, Palm Springs adjacent, I guess. It's about 280,000 square feet, and we have production, and we try to do everything in one spot from there. We have distro hubs in a few different cities, but the reason we picked DHS is because it's really easy to operate there. I know a lot of guys that are spread out and have cultivations all over, and their biggest complaint is getting from one to another. I think retail is easy to operate and to a certain point, easy to operate in different cities because it's a repeatable model. You know, get a package, mark it up, put it on the shelves, pay your taxes.
And in terms of tax relief, them limiting the cultivation tax or eliminating it, right? California, that helped farmers, right? Did it help vertically integrated operators as well? Or did it just kick the tax into another side of your business?
It was huge. It made the price of all products go down. And, imagine the industry goes from, $1,500 a pound. There was really good flower being sold not that long ago for $600-$750 a pound, but it was still getting taxed by the pound of $164. So that same time we were getting $2,000 for the pound, getting taxed $164. That tax rate really increased as a percentage. So I can't remember the question at the moment.
No, but was it meaningful? Was it impactful?
Yeah, it was very impactful. So yeah, getting rid of that tax was huge. Plus, what other industry taxes the farmer before they can realize the profit? So that there was a lot of farms that grew the marijuana owed the tax because it was sitting in a distro because they can't hold it on their farm and they had to turn in taxes to stuff they hadn't even sold.
Outdoor stuff was almost to the point where the taxes were more than the pound's worth.
Oh yeah, there was $100 pounds. ROKU was rocking a lot of stuff up there. He was helping farmers connect to try to get money. And sometimes that stuff was getting sold for less than $150 a pound, and the tax was $164. It just didn't make sense. But the farmers were bleeding at the time. They were taking ridiculous offers, and it was crazy.
And the cities can still have a cultivation tax, right? And I've always been told, and I don't know if you two would agree with this, but it's the state and the heavy hand of the excise tax at the state level, more so than the municipal taxes that are being paid. The municipal taxes generally range from 1% to 3%. I don't know if I'm wrong in that. Maybe it's higher in some of the cities, but it's up from that. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, what are you there? 7.2 in here?
In LA?
Yeah.
It's like 10.
10, yeah.
10, really?
7.6, I think, in Long Beach, man. I don't know. It's a lot, but it's in comparison to Target selling a pair of shoes or socks or shirt or grocery, rather than no grocery tax, it's double, right? Normally.
If even that, yeah, right,
Yeah.
for real. And so is it more important that the state start to recognize tax reform, or is it more important that we start recognizing it at the municipal level?
State. 1,000% state. That excise tax is crazy. He made a point earlier, the distros used to collect that money and pay it as of January 1st. Now, dispensaries, it's going to be the same to the consumer, but you'll see it on your tag now. You're like, oh, I've always paid $30 for this eighth out the door, but now, 13% of that actually goes to the state. Now, there's a lot of operators I'm worried about because now they have this extra money coming in, and they're going to have to do a tax return on every month, every quarter until they get solidified, and they're running at such tight margins right now. I think there's going to be some tough paying tax payments at the retail level here this year. So it's a different plan.
It's easy to slip up in that situation, especially these ones not understanding what's coming to them.
Yeah.
And unfortunately.
And the truth is, right, that opening the door for more cities is probably going to require being part of the discussion on a municipal tax, precursing it, right? And that's really the point. As an industry, how do we continue to rail against the overhanded taxation? There's no other industry in the state of California, no other agribusiness that was taxed at point of origin for the commodity that was being, agriculturally cultivated. And then, of course, we're taxed along the way, more so than alcohol and tobacco, even in many ways, right? So that's the unsustainable model. And so for us this year, I think legislatively, what we can all agree on is that there's going to have to be lobbying and probably a lot of organizing that goes on during this course of this year, right? The UCBA is an organization. I know that for some, NORML has always been the bastion, right? The CCIA, right, is out there. But for us here at Cannabis Capitol, we've become really aligned with the Long Beach Collective Association. I think they've really brought forth a common ground strategy for their city that can replicate and apply throughout the state. I hope we see more cities like Fontana that bring their regulatory structure without having to put a tax on the ballot. they've been talking about different ways of going about that. But I think for the state of California this year, it'll be important for us to continue to see those markets succeed, right? To accept these municipal taxes and to keep hammering on the state to be realistic about what they're doing to us organizationally. So, gentlemen, we're getting kind of towards the point of the night where we're through this inaugural episode, right? And I appreciate you both. You've done an awesome job. But as you can imagine, everybody, right? I like to say to guests, is there anything I didn't ask you about or you feel like you wanted to clarify or an issue you think we should have covered tonight that hasn't been talked about yet? Would both of you two, just pick one of you to start and just.
I think Waylon should go first.
Thank you, Greg. No, I don't know. I guess for me right now, what's really been on my mind is to see what happens with this new tax change, with the excise tax, like we're talking about, is with it going into the stores, what is it really going to do? Is it going to allow the state to see more revenue coming in? To then maybe that is the precursor to the taxes coming down. So that's just something that's been on my mind, and I wish for the best for that scenario, that it does give us the ability to push in the next legislation to get our taxes down.
I think it's going to make it easy for them to actually regulate it and look and see where the taxes are going. With all the distros that, fly-by-night distros that were going, I think the state was having a real tough time tracking and actually collecting that excise tax. So hopefully it'll make revenues go up to the state so they can realize, we can actually lower it because we can collect the tax that's due. A reasonable tax will be fine. I think this is a year of writing your business plan in pencil and keeping your eraser handy. Getting ready to jump hurdles that you don't foresee. I always tell my team, when you wake up in the morning and you think you got it done, you're ready to fucking kill it, just wait a couple hours, something's going to happen. So somebody's going to do something, somebody's going to, the city's going to come out with a new rule. You can't have red packaging now or whatever it is. So erase it, rewrite it, and just, you got to hustle. We're an industry of hustlers. That's one thing. So I know a lot of hard work. All you folks in here are probably in the industry work really hard. And I know it sometimes when you're looking up, it's like, they're sitting behind a desk all day. There's a lot of stress in both ways. And I just applaud all the hustlers in the industry and try to keep up and wake up in the morning and try to keep up with the next guy. It's very motivating to be in California. Best, the brightest. And it's good to come out here and try to compete. So.
Teamwork makes the dream work, baby. Shout out to all of you.
Yeah. And Greg, this just came to mind, and I think we should talk about it. For anyone who's looking at applying to any of these new cities, who's looking to follow the polls and stuff like that, can you give them any insight, any advice to how they should approach the process and what the timeline will be for some of these new cities?
Don't hire a consultant that is working with 20 other applicants in the same city for one. That to start, right? Yeah. We apply a lot of places, so we're pretty efficient and do it all in house. But I think just the whole application process has gotten crazy. Now the cities are so scared to get sued, they have to hire a consultant. And I'm not, HDL does most of them. They do a good job. They tend to know the industry, but it's nobody wants to stick their head out on the city level and say, here's how we're going to do it. And these are the winners and be done with it. So I think if the application process was a little easier and they weren't getting sued, then it would be faster. But honestly, we talked a little bit earlier. If it gets passed in last November, I would say you'll probably see some places opening up 18 months after that, maybe, if they're on, if everything's cooking.
Well, that's what I've been saying too. I think Huntington Beach somewhere near in 2024, right? You might see LA County this year because they actually had stuff done in 2022. Waiting for that tax vote, right? City of Claremont's still early days, right? City of Montclair's still early days.
Hey, by the way, we're really lucky we got this weather. I mean, the weather's great getting the rain this time of year, but if this was happening in the spring when the outdoor farmers were putting their plants in the ground, it would be hard. Rocco could tell you that would be hard. So let's hope these natural disasters are on the downturn, because that really throws wrenches in the industry as well.
Fire season too.
That fire season and it really screws up people's lives. So
been a long time since we've been talking about too much water, man. Plenty of fire, though, in the past few years. That has really affected the Emerald Triangle, right, significantly.
That was that sulfur kush.
It was what do they call it? Campfire OG.
Campfire OG.
Well, listen, everybody, you know, as the program gets kicked off here, looking into the rest of 2023, we're really excited to keep the industry voice alive and the movement forward. Common ground is what this is all about. We like to bring leaders like this up. We know there's other leaders here in the room with us, and I want to thank you for being here because I think that there is enough that can be accomplished in a non-election year to organize ourselves more efficiently and to also roll out in these communities where they are now adjusting the fact that, okay, so we have this tax in place, so we're going to let our industry is going to shine. We need to grow and be, continued examples of, I think, strong community members. This industry shows mad love across the board in their community relations efforts. It's very rarely that you hear of a community that has a spike in a crime rate. Typically speaking, it's a dramatic reduction in crime when licensed dispensaries open. There's a huge amount of jobs and economic stimulus that comes from having employees and new workers. And we do pay at above average rates, right? Most unions are actually competing with their wage point versus people paying above it, and it's made our industry is kind of already culturally unionized, in that we pay people well and treat people right, and that's really been about the growth of it. So for the rest of this year, you're going to see each month we're going to continue this forward. We don't need elections to make this show relevant, and we do need people like yourselves sharing your thought leadership. So can you thank Greg and thank Waylon again for us?
Get out and vote.
And I also want to thank the Cannabis Capitol team. I want to thank Chef Ross for feeding the audience tonight. I want to thank Matt behind the controls over there, Brian and Aiden, cameras and creative all over the place, and of course our executive producer, John Bayless. Once again, we'll be back next month with another edition, but for now, signing off, Cannabis Capitol's Pop Politics, Season 2 has commenced.